On my 40th birthday, they made me wear a crown that said King of Letdowns. Everyone laughed, even my wife. I pretended to laugh too. I cooked the food, took the group photos, and paid for everything. That night, I blocked everyone. 2 weeks later, my daughter was on Instagram begging, "If anyone sees my dad, please tell him we're sorry." I, 42M, never thought my 40th birthday would be the day I finally understood what rock bottom felt like. The party was at our house, the one I'd been paying the mortgage on for 15 years while my wife stayed home to find herself through various expensive hobbies. She handed me the crown first thing when guests started arriving. The words King of Letdowns were written in glittery letters that caught the light every time I moved my head. My brother started laughing immediately, then my sister-in-law joined in, followed by my own parents. Even my teenage daughter smirked from the corner where she was scrolling through her phone. But it was my wife's laugh that cut deepest, that genuine, delighted sound she made when something truly amused her. I forced myself to chuckle along, adjusting the cheap plastic crown on my head. Someone mentioned how perfect it was, how it really captured my essence. My wife nodded enthusiastically, explaining to everyone how she'd spent weeks thinking of the perfect gag gift, weeks planning how to humiliate me on my birthday. The afternoon dragged on while I played my assigned role. I grilled burgers and hot dogs in the backyard, the crown slipping down my forehead as sweat mixed with shame. Every few minutes someone would point at it and start laughing again. My wife kept encouraging people to take pictures, positioning me in the center of every group shot with that damn crown front and center. When my dad asked me to grab more beer from the garage, I caught a glimpse of myself in the car window. 42 years old, wearing a crown that announced my failures to the world, while everyone I loved found it hilarious. My wife had even posted photos on social media already. I could see her showing people the comments rolling in. The bill for the party came to over $300. Food, drinks, decorations, and even the crown itself. I had paid for my own humiliation while everyone else enjoyed the show. When the last guest finally left around 10 that night, my wife was still giggling about how well the joke had gone over. I waited until everyone was asleep, then systematically went through my phone and blocked every single person who had been at that party. My parents, my siblings, my co-workers, family friends, neighbors, everyone who had laughed at me wearing that crown. I blocked them on social media, deleted their numbers, and removed them from every messaging app. My wife discovered what I'd done 3 days later when my mother couldn't reach me. She demanded to know why I was being so dramatic over a harmless joke. I told her it wasn't harmless to me, and that maybe she should have thought about how her husband would feel before planning weeks to humiliate him. She called me pathetic and said I couldn't take a joke. That's when I realized the crown had been more accurate than anyone knew. I had been letting everyone down, myself most of all. For years I'd been the reliable one, the provider, the one who always said yes and never complained. I'd let them all treat me like their personal bank account and entertainment. I started making changes immediately. I opened a separate bank account and had my paychecks deposited there. I stopped paying for anything beyond basic household necessities. When my wife asked for money for her pottery class, I told her she'd need to get a job. When my daughter wanted new clothes, I suggested she could earn money babysitting like other kids her age. My wife was furious, but I had already checked out emotionally. I went to work, came home, and focused on my own interests for the first time in decades. I started reading again, took up photography, and began looking into what it would take to separate our finances permanently. The real panic started when I didn't show up for my nephew's graduation party 2 weeks after my birthday. My wife had assumed I'd just go along with everything like always, but I maintained my boundaries. I wasn't going anywhere I might be treated as a source of funding and entertainment. My daughter was the first to crack. She'd been trying to reach me through social media to ask for money for a school trip, only to discover I'd blocked her too. She started posting on Instagram, asking if anyone had seen me and begging for help getting in touch. The desperation in her posts was obvious. She'd never had to actually work for anything she wanted before. My wife tried a different approach, alternating between anger and manipulation. She told me I was destroying our family over one stupid joke. She promised it would never happen again. She even offered to throw me another party to make up for it. But I'd already seen how little respect any of them had for me when they thought it was funny. The turning point came when my daughter posted a video of herself crying, explaining to her followers that her dad had disappeared and they didn't know if he was okay. She begged anyone who saw me to tell me how sorry they were. The comments were full of concern and sympathy for her, which just proved how well she'd learned to manipulate situations to her advantage. I watched that video from my new apartment, the one I'd rented using money from my separate account, and felt nothing but relief. They weren't sorry about how they'd treated me. They were sorry about losing their reliable source of funding and emotional labor. Update 1. 3 weeks after blocking everyone, I received a certified letter from a lawyer. My wife was threatening to take legal action if I didn't resume paying for household expenses immediately. She claimed I was abandoning my family and shirking my responsibilities. The letter mentioned emotional distress and potential divorce proceedings. I called my own lawyer the next day. It turned out that since my name was the only one on the mortgage in most of our major accounts, I had more leverage than my wife realized. Her threats were empty. She couldn't force me to pay for her lifestyle choices, and any divorce proceedings would likely leave her in a much worse financial position than she expected. My daughter escalated her social media campaign, posting daily updates about her missing father. She'd started a hashtag and everything, treating my absence like some kind of tragic mystery rather than the natural consequence of years of disrespect. Her followers ate it up, sharing her posts and offering support for her ordeal. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had hundreds of people online who cared more about her well-being than she'd ever cared about mine. But none of those concerned strangers were going to pay for her car insurance or college fund. I started getting messages through work email from family members who'd figured out my blocking strategy. My brother wanted to know if I was having some kind of mental breakdown. My sister thought I needed therapy. My mother suggested I was going through a midlife crisis and should just come home to talk things through. None of them mentioned the crown. None of them acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, humiliating someone on their birthday wasn't the harmless fun they'd convinced themselves it was. They were all focused on my overreaction rather than examining their own behavior. Update 2. A month after my birthday, my wife showed up at my apartment. She'd hired a private investigator to find me, which seemed like an expensive way to locate someone who was still going to work every day at the same job he'd had for 8 years. She looked genuinely shocked by my new place. It was small but clean, furnished with things I'd actually chosen for myself rather than accepted because they were good enough or practical. She asked how I could afford it, and I explained that when you're not funding everyone else's lifestyle, your salary goes a lot further. She tried the apology route first, admitting the crown had been mean-spirited and promising to make it up to me. When that didn't work, she shifted to anger, accusing me of abandoning my family and being selfish. Finally, she tried guilt, telling me how much our daughter missed me and needed her father. I asked her what specifically our daughter missed about me. Was it the way I quietly paid for everything she wanted? The way I never said no to her requests for money? Or maybe she missed having someone around who would take her abuse without complaining? My wife couldn't answer that question. She kept insisting that our daughter loved me, but when pressed for examples of how that love had been demonstrated, she came up empty. Love, apparently, was supposed to be measured by my willingness to provide financially while accepting disrespect. She left after 2 hours, threatening to turn our daughter against me permanently if I didn't come home. I told her that ship had already sailed. Our daughter had been perfectly comfortable treating me badly when she thought there were no consequences. Now she was learning that actions have results. The social media posts became more aggressive. My daughter started sharing memories of better times with her father, carefully curated photos that showed me in my traditional role as provider and photographer. She never posted the pictures from my birthday party, though. Those memories apparently weren't worth sharing. Update 3. 2 months after blocking everyone, I received an unexpected visitor at work. My daughter had tracked down my office and was waiting in the lobby when I came back from lunch. She looked different, thinner, more tired, and wearing clothes I recognized from previous years rather than the constant stream of new purchases she was used to. She asked if we could talk privately, and I agreed to walk with her to a nearby coffee shop. She offered to pay for our drinks, then realized she didn't have enough money and looked embarrassed. I bought 2 coffees and waited for her to explain why she'd come. She started with apologies, admitting that the crown had been cruel and that she should have stood up for me instead of laughing along. She said she'd been thinking about it for weeks and realized how much I did for the family that went unnoticed and unappreciated. She promised things would be different if I came home. I asked her about the Instagram posts, the crying videos, and the hashtag campaign. She looked uncomfortable and admitted that her mother had encouraged her to post about my absence to pressure me into returning. They'd planned the whole social media strategy together, treating my pain like a marketing problem to solve. That confirmed what I'd suspected. Even her apology was part of a coordinated effort to manipulate me back into my old role. She wasn't sorry about how they'd treated me. She was sorry about the consequences of that treatment. I told her I loved her, but that love didn't mean accepting abuse or funding disrespect. If she wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be built on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. She could visit me, call me, and spend time with me, but the days of treating me like an ATM were over. She started crying then, asking what she was supposed to do about college, her car payments, and all the other expenses she'd never had to worry about before. I suggested she could do what millions of other young people do: get a job, apply for financial aid, and learn to budget her money. The conversation ended with her accusing me of not loving her enough to forgive and forget. She said a real father would put his family first, no matter how they treated him. I realized she'd learned that manipulation tactic from watching her mother use it on me for years. As she walked away, I felt sad but not guilty. I'd given her 18 years of unconditional financial support and emotional availability. If that wasn't enough to earn basic respect, then more of the same wouldn't fix the problem. Final update. 6 months have passed since my 40th birthday party, and I've built a life I actually enjoy. I've been promoted at work, partly because I'm no longer distracted by constant family drama and financial stress. My small apartment has become a sanctuary where I can pursue hobbies and interests I'd abandoned years ago. My wife filed for divorce 3 months ago, demanding alimony and half of everything despite having contributed nothing to our household income in over a decade. Her lawyer quickly discovered that most of our assets were in my name only, and her threats to take me for everything I was worth turned out to be empty bluster. My daughter and I have had a few more conversations, each following the same pattern. She apologizes for past behavior, promises to change, then reveals that she's really just looking for money for some new expense. She started working part-time at a retail job, which she complains about constantly, but which has taught her more about the value of money than 18 years of my unconditional generosity ever did. The rest of my family still reaches out occasionally through work email or mutual acquaintances, always framing my boundaries as stubbornness or mental illness. My brother suggested I needed therapy to deal with my inability to forgive. My mother wanted to know when I'd stop punishing everyone for one little joke. They still don't understand that the crown wasn't the problem. It was just the symbol of a much deeper issue. They trained me to accept disrespect by making me believe that setting boundaries meant I didn't love them enough. They'd convinced me that being a good provider meant never expecting anything in return, not even basic consideration. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just thrown the crown away and pretended everything was fine. I'd probably still be funding everyone else's life while they laughed at me behind my back. I'd still be the reliable ATM who never complained and always came through in the end. But I'm not that person anymore. The King of Letdowns crown had been more accurate than anyone realized. I had been letting everyone down, especially myself. Now I'm learning what it feels like to live up to my own expectations instead of constantly failing to meet everyone else's demands. My 41st birthday is coming up next month. I'll spend it alone, doing things I actually enjoy, surrounded by people who treat me with respect. There won't be any crowns, any forced laughter, or any bills to pay for my own humiliation. For the first time in decades, I'm looking forward to celebrating another year of life.